I thought I knew what unconditional family love meant until 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night when my phone rang with the kind of desperation that changes everything. My mother, Patricia's voice was shaking as she said those words that would shatter my understanding of family forever. My sister Madison was in serious financial trouble, $15,000 deep in credit card debt, and somehow this had become my emergency to solve. I had worked so hard to build my independent life as a software engineer, but that phone call pulled me right back into the family drama I thought I had escaped. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Trust me, you will not believe how this family drama unfolded. Growing up, I always knew I was different from my sister Madison. While she was the golden child who could do no wrong, I was the responsible one who had to earn every bit of approval. Madison, who was 3 years younger than my 28 years, had always been the center of attention in our suburban Ohio household. Our father David worked as a bank manager, and our mother Patricia taught elementary school, and together they created this perfect bubble around Madison, where consequences never seemed to exist. I remember working 3 part-time jobs during college just to pay my tuition, while Madison got her entire college experience funded, without question. When I was 20 and desperately needed a car to get to my evening job at a call center, I had to save up for months to buy a beat-up Honda Civic. But when Madison crashed her car at 22 during what she called a minor fender bender, our parents immediately bought her a brand new Toyota Camry. The double standard was so obvious it hurt, but I had learned to accept it as just the way our family worked. So when I drove to their house that Wednesday evening after the phone call, I was not entirely surprised to find myself walking into another Madison crisis. The living room felt heavy with tension as I sat down on the familiar burgundy couch where I had spent countless childhood hours. Madison was curled up in the corner chair, her eyes red and puffy from crying, refusing to make eye contact with me. She looked smaller than usual, almost fragile, and I felt that familiar tug of protective instinct despite my frustration. Patricia had laid out what she called the facts on the coffee table, like evidence in a court case. There were credit card statements from Nordstrom showing $3,200 in purchases, Louis Vuitton receipts totaling $2,800, and restaurant bills that ranged from $400 to $600 per month. The numbers were staggering, especially knowing that Madison worked part-time at a retail store, making barely above minimum wage. Madison finally spoke up, her voice, barely above a whisper. "I did not mean for this to happen, Joyce. I thought I could pay it back. Alex and I were eating out a lot, and I wanted to look nice for him and his friends. I thought when I got that promotion at work, everything would be fine." Her boyfriend Alex was someone I had met only twice, and both times he struck me as the kind of guy who expected women to pay their own way while he saved his money for his motorcycle payments. David cleared his throat and fixed me with that serious look he used when discussing bank business. "You make good money at that tech company, Joyce. $15,000 is nothing for you compared to what this means for Madison's future. Her credit score will be ruined if we do not handle this immediately." He was right that my software engineering salary was comfortable, but his dismissive tone about my hard-earned money stung more than I expected. I tried to explain my own financial situation, how I was paying $800 a month in student loans, managing my mortgage payments, and trying to save for retirement like any responsible adult. But Patricia interrupted me with that exasperated sigh she had perfected over the years. "Do not you want your sister to have good credit? This could ruin her entire future before it even starts." The conversation went in circles for 2 hours. I offered a compromise, suggesting I could pay $5,000 immediately, and Madison could work out monthly payments for the remaining $10,000. It seemed reasonable to me, a way to help while still teaching some responsibility. But David refused outright, insisting that the credit card companies wanted full payment to prevent further interest accumulation. As I drove home that night, Madison's final text message lit up my phone screen. "I'm sorry you hate me so much." Those 8 words hit me harder than any of the financial numbers we had discussed. I did not hate her. I loved her desperately. But I was beginning to realize that our family's version of love came with a price tag I had never learned to calculate. The phone call started the very next morning and continued every single day for the following week. Patricia had appointed herself as the official updater of Madison's deteriorating mental state, calling me at work with increasingly dramatic reports about my sister's condition. Madison cannot sleep, Joyce. She cannot eat. She's having panic attacks about declaring bankruptcy. Last night, I found her crying on the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning. Each conversation followed the same script. Patricia would describe Madison's suffering in vivid detail. Then David would chime in with updated financial information. The interest is piling up daily. It is now $16,200. Every day you wait makes this worse for everyone. They had perfected this tag team approach that left me feeling guilty and pressured from both emotional and practical angles. But something felt off about their narrative, especially when I accidentally discovered Madison's recent Instagram posts. There she was, just 3 days after our family meeting, showing off a brand new designer purse at some trendy downtown restaurant with Alex. The purse looked expensive, definitely not something someone having daily panic attacks about debt would be purchasing. When I brought this up to Patricia, her defensive response revealed more than she probably intended. That was a gift from Alex, Joyce. You're being paranoid and looking for reasons to not help your sister. I'm so disappointed in how suspicious you have become. But I was not being paranoid. I was finally paying attention to patterns I had ignored for years. This was not Madison's first financial crisis, just the biggest one that had made it to my doorstep. The family pressure campaign began in earnest during the second week. My Aunt Susan called me at 7 in the morning before I had even finished my coffee. Joyce, honey, your parents sacrificed everything for you girls. Is this really how you want to repay them after everything they have done? The conversation was clearly scripted, with Susan hitting talking points that sounded exactly like things Patricia would say. Then came the call that really shook me. My 90-year-old grandmother, Eleanor, who usually only called on birthdays and major holidays, was suddenly on my phone with a speech about family values. I do not understand why you will not help your baby sister, Joyce. In my day, family came first, before money, before pride, before everything else. The words sounded wrong coming from her, too formal and coached like someone had written them down for her to read. I realized that my parents had mobilized our entire extended family, spreading their version of the story to anyone who would listen. My Facebook feed started filling up with passive-aggressive posts from cousins about selfish family members who forget where they came from, and people who get successful and abandon their roots. I felt completely isolated, like I was the villain in a story where everyone else knew the script, except me. That weekend, I decided to do some research of my own. I started thinking back through family conversations over the past few years, looking for patterns I had missed. Madison's car loan the previous year, which our parents had co-signed when she could not qualify a loan. Her apartment deposit 6 months ago, which Patricia had quietly paid after Madison's first application, was rejected. Even her college credit card debt during her junior year, which David had handled without ever telling me it existed. The pattern became crystal clear. Madison created financial emergencies, our parents rescued her, and life continued as if nothing had happened. She had never experienced real consequences for poor financial decisions, because our family always provided a safety net. But this debt was too big for our parents to handle alone, so they needed me to become part of the rescue operation. I called another family meeting determined to address what I saw as the real problem. This time I came prepared with a proposal that focused on teaching Madison financial responsibility. I suggested she take a financial counseling course, get a second job, and create a structured payment plan that she could manage herself. I even offered to help her build a budget and find resources for debt management. David's reaction was immediate and angry. Why are you making this so complicated? Joyce Madison is drowning, and you want to give her swimming lessons instead of throwing her a life preserver. Just write the check and end this nightmare for all of us. Patricia joined in her voice, taking on that wounded tone she used when she wanted to make me feel guilty. You're being cruel to someone who is already suffering. Madison is fragile right now and needs support, not lectures about responsibility. Madison herself stormed out of the room, but not before delivering her final blow. I knew you did not care about me, Joyce. I knew you would find a way to make this my fault, instead of just helping me like a real sister would. The front door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with our parents and the weight of their disappointment. The ultimatum came on a Friday morning, delivered through a phone call that changed everything between my father and me forever. David's voice was colder than I had ever heard it, stripped of any pretense of parental warmth. Pay Madison's debt by 5 o'clock today, or we are cutting you off completely. No more family dinners, no more holiday celebrations, no more inheritance when we are gone. You will be dead to us, Joyce. Patricia had picked up the extension, her voice adding the emotional manipulation that David's businesslike tone had missed. 28 years of love and support, and this is how it ends. Over money that means nothing to you, but everything to your sister's future. I never thought I would see the day when my own daughter would be so heartless. I was stunned into silence for several seconds, trying to process what they had just said. You are threatening to disown me over money. Your own daughter. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth, like I was reading lines from some melodramatic movie script. David's response was swift and final. We are disowning you over your selfishness and your complete lack of family values. Madison is in crisis, and you have the power to fix it, but you would rather protect your bank account than your own sister's life. In the background, I could hear Madison's voice adding her own commentary. Tell her if she does not care about me, then I do not care about her either. I am done pretending we are sisters. That afternoon, I got a call from my best friend Sarah, who worked at the local bank downtown. Her voice was hesitant, like she was not sure whether to share what she had seen. Joyce, I saw Madison at the BMW dealership this morning. She was talking to a salesman about financing options for one of their newer models. I thought you should know, especially with everything your family is going through right now. I left work early and drove straight to Madison's retail job at the department store in the mall. I found her during her break, sitting in the employee break room, scrolling through her phone. When I confronted her about the car dealership visit, her defensive reaction told me everything I needed to know. Alex said he might help with the payments if I found something nice enough. We have been talking about moving in together, and he wants us to look successful when we go places with his friends. She was completely serious, apparently seeing no connection between shopping for luxury cars and claiming to have panic attacks about existing debt. But the real shock came when I pressed her about why she thought I owed her this money. Madison's response revealed a conversation with our parents that I had never been part of. Mom and Dad always said you owed us because you got successful, and we helped make that happen. They said family members who do well have a responsibility to lift up the ones who are struggling. I felt something break inside my chest, a shift in understanding that could never be repaired. Madison, I worked 3 jobs to pay for college. I have been financially independent since I was 18 years old. What exactly do you think I owe you? But she was already retreating into the victim narrative that our parents had crafted for her. That evening, I called my parents for what I somehow knew would be our final conversation. Patricia answered on the first ring, her voice immediately hopeful. Have you come to your senses, Joyce? Are you ready to do the right thing and pay? I tried one more time to understand their reasoning. I want you to explain to me why you believe I owe Madison $15,000 of my own money. The question seemed to confuse them, as if I was asking something obvious that did not need explanation. David took over, his bank manager voice in full effect. We invested in your education and your future, Joyce. When you benefit, the family benefits. That is how families work. But I had clear memories of working those 3 jobs of eating ramen noodles for dinner, because I could not afford anything else of wearing the same winter coat for 4 years, because I could not justify the expense of a new one. I paid my own way through college, Dad. I worked 3 jobs while Madison got everything paid for. I've been independent since I graduated. Patricia's response revealed how completely they had rewritten our family history in their own minds. We provided emotional support, Joyce. We housed you and fed you and loved you. Do you think that counts for nothing? I realized that this conversation would never end in understanding. They genuinely believed that my success was partly their creation and therefore partly their property. Madison's debt was not really the issue. This was about control, about maintaining a family dynamic, where I would always be obligated to rescue Madison from the consequences of her choices. Friday at 5 o'clock came and went without any payment from me. Instead, I sent a text message that I had carefully crafted after hours of thought and revision. I will not be paying Madison's debt. This decision is final. If you choose to cut contact with me, I accept that consequence. I love you all, but I cannot enable destructive patterns anymore. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone rang continuously for 2 hours with calls I did not answer. The voicemail started angry and escalated to desperate, then circled back to furious. Patricia's messages ranged from crying and begging to making threats about how sorry I would be when they were gone, and it was too late to make amends. David's voicemails were shorter, but more cutting, each one reiterating that I was no longer their daughter and should never contact them again. I blocked their numbers that night and removed them from all my social media accounts. The relief I felt was unexpected and immediate, like setting down a heavy weight I had not realized I was carrying. For the first time in years, my phone was not buzzing with family crisis updates or guilt-inducing messages about my responsibilities to people who seemed determined to avoid their own. The extended family blowback was swift and predictable. Nasty messages appeared in my inbox from cousins and aunts who had heard only one side of the story. I was removed from family group chats and uninvited from upcoming celebrations through pointedly silent treatment rather than direct communication. The family had chosen their side, and it was not mine. At work, my colleagues started noticing positive changes in my demeanor before I did. My supervisor mentioned that I seemed more focused and less stressed during our quarterly review. My closest work friend pointed out that I had stopped checking my phone anxiously during meetings and seemed more present in conversations. I had not realized how much mental energy the family drama had been consuming until it was suddenly gone. The most revealing development came 6 weeks later, when I learned through a mutual friend that Madison had found a solution to her debt problem. Alex's parents had paid the entire amount after he convinced them that Madison was a good investment for their son's future happiness. Madison had avoided all consequences, once again, just with different enablers than she had originally planned. This confirmed everything I had suspected about the situation. It was never really about the money being impossible to find or Madison facing genuine hardship. It was about maintaining the family pattern where Madison created problems and other people solved them. If I had paid, it would have just reinforced her belief that financial irresponsibility would always be rescued by family obligation. 6 months after cutting contact, I started therapy to understand the family dynamics that had shaped my entire adult life. Learning about golden child and scapegoat roles helped me understand that my guilt and sense of obligation were not based on actual wrongdoing on my part. I had been assigned the role of family fixer, responsible for everyone else's emotional and financial well-being, while my own needs were treated as secondary. The therapy also helped me recognize how much money I had been spending over the years on family crisis management. Birthday gifts that cost more than I could afford, because anything less would be seen as proof that success had made me selfish. Emergency loans that were never repaid but never mentioned again. Picking up restaurant tabs and covering entertainment expenses whenever we spent time together, because I was the one with the good job. With that financial drain removed, I was able to focus on my own goals for the first time in my adult life. I received a promotion to senior engineer 8 months after cutting contact, partly because I was no longer distracted by constant family emergencies. I started saving for a house in a neighborhood I actually wanted to live in, rather than choosing based on proximity to family who might need my help. Building a chosen family with friends and colleagues who supported healthy boundaries became one of the most rewarding aspects of my new life. My boyfriend James, who I started dating about a year after the family break, was amazed by the stories I told about my previous life. "You were like an unpaid crisis counselor for people who never appreciated the service," he said after I explained why I had no contact with my biological family. 2 years later, I occasionally get updates through old family friends who stay in touch with everyone. Madison married Alex, but is apparently facing new financial problems with their credit cards maxed out again, according to the most recent report. My parents never reached out with pride, apparently preventing any acknowledgement that their ultimatum had backfired completely. The lesson I learned through this painful experience changed how I approach every relationship in my life. Setting boundaries is not cruel or selfish. It is necessary for everyone's growth and development. Real love does not come with financial ultimatums or emotional blackmail attached. When people threaten to withdraw their love, unless you comply with their demands, they are not offering love in the first place. They are offering a transaction. I lost family members, but I gained something more valuable. I discovered that the people I had been trying so hard to please were really just transaction partners who saw me as a resource rather than a person. Walking away from that dynamic was the most loving thing I could do, not just for myself, but for them too, because it forced everyone to face their own choices instead of using mine as a crutch for avoiding responsibility. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is call someone's bluff when they threaten to take away their love. Because real love, the kind worth having, does not come with conditions or price tags attached. And once you know the difference, you can never go back to accepting anything less. Have you ever been in a situation where family members tried to manipulate you with ultimatums? How did you handle the pressure to choose between your boundaries and their approval? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family dynamics and setting healthy boundaries. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that choosing yourself is not selfish. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth is not determined by how much you sacrifice for people who refuse to appreciate it. Take care of yourself out there.